machine gun, and I actually had a pretty good spot. I could see pretty well, and there were only a couple of ways that the enemy could get to me, and they had set me where I could see those avenues of approach really well. So I was able to keep people away from that point. Unfortunately, on the other side of the aircraft, it was much more wide open, and they had a large area where they were being shot at and attacked from.
Then once the shooting stopped, you were by yourself, you'd run out of ammunition. What was going through your head at the time?
Well, we had been told that the Somalis had done some pretty horrible things to some of their other enemies in the previous few months, and at the time, I think I saw it all as maybe rumor or speculation. I suppose I was a bit naive in not thinking that humans were capable of such things, and unfortunately, it's been proven many times over in the past 10 years or so that there are humans that are capable of these kind of things, and it went through my mind that that was about to happen to me, and I didn't know how I was going to die. I just was pretty convinced that it was about to happen. And I remember thinking about my son Joey, and then they overcame me. I left home one day before his first birthday. So, you don't even get to know your son, or he doesn't get to know you, and it's over. At least that's what I feared.
You had taken off your watch and your wedding ring. Why did you do that?
I don't know. You might say I was in shock. It's possible that I was. I remember doing it, but I have no idea why I did it. And I just set them on the console in the cockpit, and then Randy and Gary arrived.
Michael Durant is with me in the studio. He's a former Black Hawk helicopter pilot and author of In the Company of Heroes. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more with Michael Durant and his story of being shot down over Somalia. This is Focal Point. I'm Mimi Gerges. I hope you're enjoying the program. Focal Point is an independently produced show, and we need your support to continue bringing you quality programming. To find out how you can help, please visit our website, www.fpradio.com, or send us an email to info@fpradio.com. And thanks. We value your feedback on our programs. Please send your comments to feedback@fpradio.com. That's feedback@fpradio.com. Welcome back. You're listening to Focal Point. With me in the studio, Michael Durant, retired Chief Warrant Officer 4 and Black Hawk helicopter pilot. We're discussing his story called In the Company of Heroes. Before the break, we discussed how you crashed and tried to fend off your attackers. You'd run out of ammunition, and now the mob had come and started beating you. What happened?
Well, fear pretty much overcame me at that point. I really did think I was about to die and felt helpless to prevent it, and there was no way to stop it. I had been to survival school, and they teach you some fundamental concepts, and one is a realization that the fight's over and it's now survival. And I can't say that there was a conscious point where I said, okay, time to switch to survival mode, but I really did at some point in that sequence realize that I can't win this gun battle anymore, and now I'm at their mercy, and I've got to survive this thing. And one of another fundamental concept is to be passive, meaning they're extremely agitated. Your life literally hangs by a thread. So the more passive you can be during this particular phase, the more likely it is that you will survive. So I tried to not even react to when they were striking me. They were trying to remove all my gear. I actually helped them get it off, didn't say a word, and just tried to make it through that sequence in time.
I was surprised to read that there was actually women in that mob also beating you.
And I think the Somalis actually told me this. I'm not sure, but I remember it was a perception in the aftermath that the women actually appear to be more vengeful than the men. And I believe it's a cultural aspect where if they've lost a son or a husband, that they have to take someone from who they think, something from who they think the perpetrator might have been or whoever might have been responsible. And I actually do believe that we discussed that in captivity as to why they were so angry and so violent.
During the mob attack, you were beaten in the face, and it was supposedly by the butt of a rifle. What really happened?
Well, I let that story ride for a while, just because what I didn't realize is that everyone knew what happened. I didn't know about the media coverage of the bodies dragged through the streets. I hadn't seen the pictures, so I thought, maybe this is something that happened here, and it'll never make it out to the world, and the families won't know that these horrible things occurred to their sons and husbands and fathers. What I didn't realize was everybody already knew that all these things had occurred, and the reality of it is they actually chopped bodies into pieces. I mean, it was inhuman. It was, again, as I said, things that I didn't think humans were capable of. And they struck me in the face with what I believe was a severed arm of one of the members of the crew of Super 6-4. I have no idea who. But it was a soft, heavy object, and I always wondered why no one ever challenged that, because if you're hit with something hard like the butt of a rifle, it leaves a big welt. And I didn't have a welt. I had a shattered cheekbone and eye socket and nose, but there was no welt. It's just a small cut. And anyhow, I knew why, but I always wondered why no one ever asked me where was the welt. But that's why. It was not a rifle butt.
At this point, did you know that you were the only survivor?
No, and I really didn't know that until near the end of my captivity. I suppose I hoped beyond hope that somehow, some way, someone else might have made it out of there, and was optimistic that maybe they escaped or maybe they were taken captive as I was. But I as soon as the mob overran us, I lost track of everyone else at that point. I tell people there could have been 10 people or there could have been 10,000. Once they closed on me, I couldn't see beyond 2 or 3 feet away. So the things that occurred to everyone else were beyond my sight, my line of sight. But during my captivity, I was given a small transistor radio, and I actually listened to BBC and Armed Forces Radio Network broadcasts. And during that time, they released the names of some of the remains that had been recovered. And the last set of remains was not identified until it was either the day before I was released or the day I was released, and that added up to the missing 5. And I knew at that point, finally, that everyone else had been killed.
So why were you taken into captivity? I mean, quite frankly, why didn't the mob just kill you?
Well, I think the mob would have, and I didn't see this or hear this, but a Somali, interviewed by Mark Bowden, the author of Black Hawk Down, claims that he fired a round in the air to try to stop the beating, to gain control of the mob, to then bring me into custody, because he was a member of the Haber-Gitter clan, and the Haber-Gitter clan wanted an American prisoner. And he saw this as an opportunity to have a live American prisoner versus another body. So he claims to have taken control of the scene at the crash site. Again, none of which I recall. If it was going on, I couldn't tell. I just remember that things calmed down, and suddenly I'm wrapped up, or a rag is wrapped around my head, and I'm hoisted up in the air and taken out of there.
And where were you taken?
I don't know. I couldn't see, and it was... in the book, we describe it as a mosh pit from hell. It was, literally being carried through the streets aloft, and people screaming and crying out and threatening me and striking me, and we just made our way through the streets for maybe 5-10 minutes, and then I ended up in a small room a few blocks away.
Michael Durant is my guest. He's a retired Chief Warrant Officer 4. His new book is called In the Company of Heroes. It's out in paperback. Michael, how long had you been flying Black Hawks by then?
I got qualified in the Black Hawk in the mid-'80s. This was 93, so about 8 years.
Describe the Black Hawk and how it's used in combat.
Well, it's a very capable aircraft. It's in terms that most people would understand, it's the replacement aircraft for the Huey. The Huey